Hey, what's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars. We're taking a look today with 1998's Godzilla, and why I'm doing that right now is in preparation for Godzilla. Kings of Monsters comes out to digital on August 13th. I have not yet seen it, so this is kind of a preparation thing. I'm going to see all the Godzilla movies, or at least American Godzilla movies in the meantime, and because they're going to be pairing him up with King Kong in the next movie next year, I might as well watch those as well, starting with Peter Jackson's 2005 version, and then obviously Kong Skull Island. So I'll be having reviews of those soon enough, but right now we're starting with this one to start the monster movie madness experience. Yes, I understand that people hate this movie with a passion. I get it, I saw it in theater when I was a kid, and you know what? I loved it. However, I will remind you that it came out 21 years ago. I am now 31. That means that I was 10 in the theater. And when you're 10, the only thing you're really looking for is exciting sequences, and there's plenty of exciting sequences in this movie, so of course I'm going to really enjoy it. Obviously, a rewatch of the movie is going to change my experiences dramatically, and probably for the worse given how much people hate it. And is that the case? Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the character of Godzilla, how he should be perceived, how his character should be done. However, I'm not going to let that bias change my experience with this film. Whenever you let the source material dictate your expectations, your experiences will be bad. It's like they always say, it'll never be as good as the original. I don't even say that. The most I say is it will be different than the original, and different doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Even Roland, Emmerich, who directed this movie, had said he didn't really like the original series. He hated it, and that he wanted to make it his own thing. He wasn't even going to do this movie if he wasn't allowed to do his own thing. And you know what? They gave him the golden key, and they said, have at it. And you know what? Give credit where credit is due. He made the movie that he wanted to make. The only thing that I can say is watch this movie as it should be seen, as basically just a monster movie. If it is made well, then isn't that all that really matters? That's where I come in, and then I answer the question, is it a well-made monster movie in general? There are things that I like about this movie. There are things that I hate about this movie. I wouldn't say it's as bad as everybody says it is. However, I definitely don't love it like I used to anymore. I will start off by telling you what I did like about the movie, because there is a few things that I do like, starting off with the graphic design of Godzilla. A lot of people hate it. I actually like it. There's something about it that's iconic, that's memorable, that's different from everything else that you might imagine. You can picture it in your head, and that's always a good thing, regardless on how you compare it to the original. Like I said, don't compare it to the source material. Just look at it as its own thing, and you'll realize that it is kind of a memorable thing. Even the way it sounds is memorable. It's a take off of the original Godzilla roar, but it is also kind of unique in its own sense too. Whenever you have something in a movie, whatever it is, that ends up being memorable for decades to come, then it's actually something that's good, regardless on how you feel about it, because it is memorable, and memorable is something that you want in a movie. I also like that they try to differentiate and diversify the characters by not making them all military or all scientists, but instead it's like a range of different people. So you got military, you got scientists, you got journalists, you got reporters, you got the French Secret Service. That way they're able to give each person kind of their individual importance into what's going on. Even if the story's not really heading anywhere specific, all of these characters have more of a role to play that helps make it feel more unique. I also like the cast. I think which is weird, because if it came out today, I'd think it was really a bad decision and weird decision to pick Matthew Broderick for a Godzilla movie. However, he makes it work. He works as this biologist that's kind of weird and kooky, because the movie is also kind of trying to throw out light humor, kind of in the way that Independence Day did its light humor. And Matthew Broderick kind of fits pretty well into that idea, into that atmosphere that they're going for. But I think a big part of why I like this cast is also because of nostalgia. There's something about it when I picture the film that sees me seeing Matthew Broderick this whole time. But really, when it comes down to positives, that's really it. There's a lot of negatives in this movie, technically speaking, when you're not even looking at the source material, when you're just looking at it as a movie that really stands out as bad, starting with visuals. Something about the visuals in this movie is super aged. It looks so bad. I noticed the bad CGI, the lack of details in it. I noticed the miniatures whenever they used it, because I don't know if it was just the camera they were using or what, but it just didn't look the greatest. As a story progression, it is really weak. It's not really going anywhere specifically. It feels super convoluted for no real reason, because the audience is never really clued in on where it's going, and when they're not clued in, it feels like it'll never end.
Yes, it goes on and on, my friend.
And actually, it has multiple endings where it feels like it really isn't ever gonna end. That's because the narrative in this film is really confusing, and that's true for any typical traditional monster movie. When you're looking at any kind of strong narrative, you're looking for something that every character can provide perspective to. And for monster movies, traditional monster movies, it's almost always the same thing. Everybody's looking at the monster. They can all provide perspective to the monster. However, the monster's a character too, and he can't provide perspective to himself, which makes it for kind of a weak perspective. This is where I will compare it to the original traditional Godzilla films, because it's still a monster movie. Everybody has their perspective on the monsters. However, Godzilla also has perspective to the monsters because there's more than just one. And Godzilla turns into kind of a good monster, which is weird because it's a terrifying image, but it's also helpful. That way you have humans on one side, Godzilla on the other side, and in the middle you have a group of monsters that need to be taken care of, and Godzilla turns into the protagonist because it is his mission to take care of that and bring balance back to the world. You don't get that with 1998's Godzilla. He's not actually trying to do anything. He's an animal that's just kind of roaming around an island. So you don't have the greatest foundation when it comes down to narrative. You also don't really have a good protagonist. You might think, oh, well, that's Matthew Broderick. But it's not really, because he's not really sensing an imbalance in the world. He's not actually trying to fix anything. He's being used as a consultant by the military to figure out what's going on with the monster, where is he going to be next, and he can kind of help because he's a biologist that looks at things like radiation. So maybe the collective mind of the military is the protagonist, but even that's really weak, because why do you need Matthew Broderick? The military is almost obviously going to be attacking this creature, and you don't actually need Matthew Broderick's character to track it down, because it's a really big target. You can't miss it. Even though I like the characters and they were trying to diversify them, it starts to get a little bit stupid when you think about it. But again, it's just like a traditional monster movie, and the narrative is almost always the same in traditional monster movies. It's just not very strong because it's always going in the same direction. Nothing about it is original as it should be, or unique as it should be. The spirit isn't there. There's lots of explosives, there's lots of action, there's lots of things actually happening on screen, lots of moving parts. So I think from a technical level, it's more entertaining than it is good. So if you like the movie from a nostalgic perspective, if you find it nostalgic, you probably always will. But if you start breaking things down like me, you'll start thinking, man, this movie has some issues. That being said, when you think about monster movies in general, it's hard to say that Godzilla 1998 doesn't pop in your head, because it does, for better or worse. When you think about monster movies, I think a lot of people think about this movie. Take that as you will. I scored this movie 57 out of 100 possible stars. That is 57%, which means it's better than it is worse, but it's by a very small margin. Like I said, I do like it more than most people do, but I do also struggle watching the movie as a whole because it is something that kind of drags on. Guys, tell me what you thought of this movie in the comments down below. As for YouTube, you know what you can do. You can hit subscribe, like it, and hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.